We begin this hour with the other major breaking news today. The Trump Justice Department making what appears to be a major escalation today in its targeting of Donald Trump's critics. Early this morning, the FBI conducted a search of the Maryland home of John Bolton. He is Trump's former national security advisor turned Trump critic. Agents also later appeared at Bolton's office building in Washington, D.C. A source close to Bolton tells NBC News it was, quote, retribution, pure and simple. According to the FBI, the searches were court-authorized, and sources tell NBC News that they were part of a national security investigation related to the handling of classified documents and potential instances of those documents being used in leaks to the media. We do not know the specific allegations against Bolton, but here's what we do know about Donald Trump and the man now in the crosshairs of his administration. After leaving his post, Bolton quickly became an outspoken critic of his former boss.
I don't think he's fit for office. I don't think he has the competence to carry out the job. There really isn't any guiding principle that I was able to discern other than what's good for Donald Trump's reelection.
What he was capable of was on a daily basis doing something more and more outrageous than he had done the day before, all to the same end of staying in power.
I think when you challenge the Constitution itself the way Trump has done, that is un-American.
Very quickly, do you agree with Mark Milley that Trump is a fascist?
You know, I don't think he's smart enough to have an ideology.
The memoir about his time in the Trump White House, a book that the administration was desperate to keep under wraps. Donald Trump accused Bolton of leaking classified information, but a court rejected those claims. That did not stop them from launching a criminal probe into the matter. That probe was later shut down under President Joe Biden's Justice Department. On that, a former DOJ official telling NBC News, quote, Attorney General Merrick Garland investigated Democrats and Republicans, including President Joe Biden, his boss, to suggest that any decision was made based on political reasons is absurd. DOJ always made decisions based on the facts and the law and not for political reasons. Upon returning to office, Trump has made clear his desire for revenge against his former national security advisor, revoking Bolton's security detail on day one, a security detail he was granted because of threats he faced from Iran. Here's what Bolton had to say about being a target of Donald Trump and the administration earlier this month.
We're about to talk about Trump's retribution campaign we're seeing at the FBI and the Justice Department. You're obviously on his enemies list. At least Kash Patel's enemies list. Are you worried that they're going to come after you in some way? I mean, he's hinted at it before.
Well, I think he's already come after me and several others in withdrawing the protection that we had for from the Iranians for the attack on Qasem Soleimani. So I think, and I said in the new forward to the paperback edition of my book, I think it is a retribution presidency.
And that is where we start this hour with MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney, and also with us, former Assistant Special Agent in Charge at the FBI, Michael Feinberg, writer and editor for Protect Democracy, Amanda Carpenter is here, as well as Andrew Weissman. Thank you all so much for being with us. Michael, let's start with you. Help us understand this in normal times from a process perspective. What is required to get a warrant for a search like this?
They essentially need to show to a federal magistrate judge that the fruits or evidence of a crime are at the facility they're seeking to search. What's interesting about this case is in meeting that requirement, the prosecutorial and investigative teams normally need to overcome what we would call a staleness concern. In other words, they would have to have some sort of up-to-date information that shows the fruits of the crime are at the residence that comes from the very recent past. Given that this matter was last investigated in 2020, I'm not quite sure how they got there.
Well, Amanda Carpenter, what do you make of a staleness concern that seems to have been overridden by this FBI?
Well, yeah, I think what we're seeing here in reality is Kash Patel's enemies list in action, right? This is the weaponization of that list. I mean, we can go through the procedures, you know, what necessitates having a warrant, but look at John Bolton's career. He is a man who has acted, you can disagree with him, and a lot of people do, but you can't say that he hasn't acted as a good faith civil servant throughout his time in Washington. I mean, he made a decision to serve Trump faithfully. A lot of people disagreed with that decision, but he was Republican, he had foreign policy views, and he was going to go into that White House and serve Trump. And when they came to policy disagreements, right, Bolton left. And he did what we ask all people of principle to do. If you see something, say something. And he went and he talked about his disagreements with Trump and why he thought Trump was not fit to serve another term. And for that reason, Donald Trump has been on a continued pressure campaign to silence him before this. This is just the latest escalation of it. You brought up him having his security removed. He needed that security because of the service that he did for Trump. They tried to stop this book. They tried to seize the profits from it. Then Kash Patel, who now runs the FBI, put a target on his back as well with a number of other people. And now you are seeing the expression of that. And I don't think we should, see it, downplay it as anything other than that. John Bolton talks to the media quite frequently. I eagerly anticipate what kind of statement he is going to make because he knows the ways of Washington. And to think that he would just willy-nilly disrespect what was being asked of him, especially when he's cooperated with other investigations and tried to get this book published in a good faith way with the Trump administration before, this is all just very hard to accept.
There's a lot that I want to unpack there, but I want to go to Ken Delaney, who I believe is at John Bolton's home in Bethesda, Maryland. Ken, we have some new reporting, a source familiar confirming to NBC News that CIA Director John Ratcliffe provided FBI Director Kash Patel the intelligence that was the basis for this search. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, Alicia, and that's why this discussion about whether it relates to the book, it's really not clear that it does, actually, and the whole staleness question. This reporting sheds new light on that issue, if in fact it's true, and that's a big if. But the New York Times is reporting, and our colleague Andrea Mitchell has confirmed that we're being told that this warrant was based in part on intelligence gathered by the CIA overseas and passed by CIA Director John Ratcliffe to the Justice Department. And the New York Times is also reporting that this is about leaks to the media that happened over the last 4 years, not 5 years ago when John Bolton was preparing his book. So again, all this is reporting from anonymous sources. Eventually we'll see the affidavit of probable cause and we'll understand what led up to this search. And the problem, of course, is what everyone is saying here is absolutely the case. This FBI, this CIA has been completely politicized. They've been saying, the leaders of these institutions have been saying things that aren't true on a regular basis about the Russia investigation, about the investigations into Donald Trump. And so the question is, can anything they say be trusted? But you do have this third party involved here, which is a magistrate judge who had to look at this evidence, knowing that every word of this affidavit will be scrutinized at some point, and approve this search warrant. This is one of the most intrusive things the FBI can do, aside from take someone's liberty away. And so they've approved it, and FBI agents went out and they spent 7.5 hours in John Bolton's home today. I was outside for most of the day. And then they emerged with several boxes of material along with computer equipment and other kinds of things. And again, we'll have to wait and see whether there's anything to this or whether this does smack of retribution by the Trump administration.
To the point, Andrew, that both Amanda and Ken have made in different ways about retribution, let's remind everyone what happened around the Mar-a-Lago raid. The National Archives, they tried multiple times to get things back from Trump after he left office. He did not comply, so then you had the FBI go in. They found about 100 documents that were marked as classified, including national defense information. Some of the records concerned military capabilities of other countries. So if I am understanding this correctly, the man who stored classified documents in his bathroom and on a ballroom stage is now searching another man's home, his critic, looking for classified documents. Is that right?
That is what it appears to be. And first, the comparison to Mar-a-Lago is just, it's people have said it's apples and oranges, or maybe it's like apples and rabbits. I mean, it's just completely different. Because John Bolton, the reporting is, had no idea that this was going to happen. So there was no effort to obtain these documents either voluntarily or through a subpoena. That's typically when I was a prosecutor, you would do that in various circumstances where you trusted the person or you thought that would work. In the Mar-a-Lago case, that was the very last thing that they were sort of forced to do because nothing else was working. So this is a very different situation. I do want to just comment on something that Ken said, which is we may never actually see the affidavit that was submitted to the magistrate judge. And so we're now having this public discussion about this search, which really should not have seen the light of day. You have John Bolton suffering the opprobrium of the investigation, but unless there's a criminal case that comes out of it, that underlying warrant, that the affidavit that's submitted by the FBI to the magistrate is something that John Bolton may never see and we may never see. And that's because the fundamental principle here that is being violated is that John Bolton, like any American or any person who is subject to the criminal law, is entitled to have that kept under wraps unless and until a grand jury decides to indict. And that hasn't happened yet. Right now, all we have is a public record that Amanda has talked about of actual retribution, and we have no contrary evidence that there's something wrong here. Now, two things could be true. There could be retribution and John Bolton could have done something wrong. And both of those could be true, but we don't have any evidence to point to. It is true that we know a magistrate and potentially two magistrates have signed warrants because there was a search, as I understand it, at his home and in his office, which are in two separate locations and would require two separate magistrates. But we don't know what's in there. We don't know what the allegations are. And John Bolton was entitled to that all being kept under wraps.